Thanks for joining us on the second part of this three-part series about how to sell your coaching business and how to prepare for it and all the twists and turns that you might expect along the way. Today, on this session, I'm joined again by Jo Haigh. Jo, as a reminder, she's sold more than 400 companies in her time as a corporate financier, and more recently, she transferred ownership of her business via an employee ownership trust. We'll be touching on that in this series as well. I'm also joined by Homy. Homy has a background in M&A and is also a full-time coach with Focal Point. So I'm very happy to introduce him today. Over to you guys. Let's take it from here.
Hi, Jo.
Hello, Homy. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. We had good chit chat before and a couple of exchanges. I'm really excited about this topic. And as you can imagine, it's something that you have great experience and I have great aspiration, so to speak. So let's just dive in very quickly because I wanted to ask you a couple of very pointed questions, especially based on a little bit that I read about you and I talked to you about. As a coach, I usually tell my clients, always be ready to exit, which usually throws a big shocker for everyone. But I wanted to come to you and start right there and just says, in your perspective and your experience, why business owners should even think about exit, even if it's so early in the process in terms of their startup. And also, what are the type of exit? Because when I say exit, everybody thinks about, oh, I'm going to sell my baby to somebody else. But your perspective, what are the type of the exits that a business owner, in this case, a coach, can look at? And then from then on, we can just go in terms of finding buyers and looking at the process and what is the nuts and bolts of it. So I hand it over to you.
Okay. Well, funny enough, actually, I was just doing a webinar this morning on selling your business. We're all aware in the UK, we've got an interesting budget coming up at the end of this month, which almost certainly is going to affect private companies with capital gains tax. And it's only going to go one way. And that is going to affect many people who have been building value in an organisation that will form part of their pension, which almost certainly she will also raid as well. So may as well just give up and go and work for somebody else. No, I'm just kidding. But what I do think, and I say to everybody I work with, and I do work a lot with people who are working towards an exit or some sort of succession planning, is the day you start your business, everything that you are doing should be working towards getting your business ready for an exit of some sort or another. And as you alluded to, Homy, there are many different ways of exiting your business. And exiting your business could be exiting it to a family member. So it doesn't mean that you're leaving it behind. It could be a legacy business that you are creating. But nevertheless, there are all sorts of things that you have to put in place to make sure that exit is as smooth as possible. And if it's about increasing value, then there are some very important things that you must put in place straight away, or at least work towards. And particularly when you're selling a coaching business, where a lot of the value are in the coaches who may be employed by you or maybe associates, and that model then becomes more challenging to sell if the business is just Homy, for instance. Because one of the things I say to people is if you do want to exit your business completely, you need to make yourself the least important person in the business as quickly as possible. And, like many of this audience probably, I started my business in my back bedroom, as many entrepreneurs do, with just me. And my business will be 35 years old at the end of this month. And it took me 20 years to actually get a team together, which has enabled me to transfer my business to my staff. And so the most important part of this is to get a great team, because that adds value. And because that makes you saleable in a management buyout, to a trade buyer, to a private equity buyer, or to an ER, or even to your children. But if you are the most important person in the business, you're going to have to stay on.
Yes.
And for many entrepreneurs, we're unemployable.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple of things you mentioned that I just wanted to touch upon, because as a coach, as I said, I've been a consultant and a coach, which I basically blend in terms of helping people grow businesses and exit. And I always ask entrepreneurs, where is your identity? If your business is you will have problems. As you just said, you have to become redundant very quickly, which means you have to build a team around you, because an entrepreneur basically is a person who scale value, and you cannot scale yourself, at least not much. And this is great because you have to think about it almost instantly. And you touched upon it. Who is your team? And how do you preserve that value into the business? Because I think this is very crucial. And as you said, there's so many different ways you can structure an exit. Now, I just want to switch a little bit, because you have the experience, and look at it from outside in. What does the buyer look into? So if I were to buy a business, what do I see? And then we can just come and just say how we can put these two together in terms of finding that buyer.
Of course, it totally depends who the buyer is.
Mm-hmm.
So a private equity investor is looking for an in and out with a great big gain as quickly as possible. A trade buyer might be looking for synergies, might be looking for the skill set in your team that they don't have to sell their services into your clients, and vice versa. You might have a brand, and just when you were mentioning about making yourself less visible, I used to say you shouldn't call your business Joe Haigh Limited, but I mean it didn't affect Mr. Marks and Spencer or Mr. Sainsbury's, but by and large, you need to create something separate from you, and obviously building a brand is important. So different buyers want different things, and I think you need to think about vertical and horizontal buyers, and also international buyers. And sometimes location is important, regional footprint is important. So there isn't one answer, but the only generic that goes along with all those things that appeal to buyers is the management team. Funnily enough, while there are traditional ways of valuing business, on multiples of profit and so on, I've sold loads of unprofitable businesses for lots of money because they've got a hidden asset. I remember selling, it was an online florist, and they had a 2 million database. We didn't sell it to a florist. We sold it to an online gift company because they wanted the 2 million database. They weren't really interested in the profit. They weren't really interested in selling the flowers. They just wanted this database. So it's knowing who to pitch to. But if you've got a good management team, trade buyers want it, private equity definitely want it. EOT, it's essential. Legacy business, it's essential, particularly if you're bringing in younger family members. By and large, that is the number one thing that you should be concentrating on. Also, I would say, if you've got too much concentration of business in one client or one client group, that doesn't make your business unsaleable, but it makes it more challenging. And usually then there are terms around a contract about retention of that client, and we'll pay you later for that, and so on.
So this is fantastic, because I think you just opened up that exiting is not a simple process, but at the same time, it is very crucial. I put my hat as a strategist in terms of how you develop a strategy for your business. So just want to quickly take that and run to a different direction in terms of, if you are a coaching business owner, how do you go about finding a buyer? And what are the advantages and disadvantages, either doing it yourself or basically go after somebody to help you in terms of finding a potential buyer? So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, I don't like to make an analogy as a corporate financier with an estate agent, but actually we do have a lot in common. And of course you can sell your own house. You can think, oh, it's worth X. I'll just stick a wooden sign outside. I'll put something on some, glorified website, notes in the post office, etc. You can do it, but you're not going to necessarily hit the right market. You're going to look unprofessional. You may have the value completely wrong. You may not have the negotiation skills, particularly if you're selling to somebody who, you really would like to sell to them because they're a nice family, but they haven't got the money. How good are you at negotiating? So you can do all this yourself, but most importantly, if you do this yourself, you've also got to run your business. And it's a full-time job running a transaction. You've mentioned time. Deals take between 9 and 12 months to complete a trade sale. EOPs are much quicker. They're about 3 months. Private equity, 9 to 12 months. And in our world, we don't count August and December because nothing happens in those months. So if you take your eye off the ball, and of course, not every deal completes, like not every house sale completes. If you've taken your eye off the ball and it happens, and you go back and you haven't actually got a business, and this has fallen over, maybe through no fault of your own. People back out for all sorts of reasons. And you may not have a business to bring back to the market for some time. In fact, my CEO has been working on a very substantial deal for us. It was due to complete at the end of August. 3 days before signing, the buyer said, we've changed our mind. The numbers aren't going in the right way. We're going to pull out. This is all the legals are done, all the due diligence is done, everything's done. So the deal fell over. Well, we're skilled enough to know how to deal with this because we always have a second and third runner in the transaction. So we said, well, thanks very much for this. Goodbye, and other words that are unrepeatable, and went to our second and third horses. They both came back within offers within days. We selected one, and on any offer, you must bear in mind that it's never just the number, it's always the terms. So, if we valued your business at £2 million and somebody comes in and offers you 4 and you see that and you go, yippee! But actually, you haven't read the small print that says it's going to be payable over 20 years. No, we've got this deal back on the table. It's literally, hopefully, everything crossed to complete on October 30th before the budget. And the original buyers came back this week and said, we'd like to come back to the table. I don't know whether it was sort of divine intervention and that we said, sorry. So if you don't feel confident and competent to deal with this roller coaster, which is like nothing on earth that you'll have gone through, you need a team to help you. And that's just the corporate financiers. You need lawyers, and you need to keep to them as minimum as possible. If anybody's going to ruin a deal, it'd be a lawyer. So one lawyer in a room is usually one too many, in my view. You need your accountant, you need a tax advisor, and tax is often overlooked. The company's been set up incorrectly. Just been looking at a deal earlier this week where the owners want to sell a wholly owned subsidiary. The shares are owned by the parent company. Of course, what will happen then is if the sale goes through, the money will go up into the parent company, and the only way they can get it out is to dissolve that company, but that company owns several other companies. So the whole deal is the whole structure of the business needs restructuring before we can even go to market. But they didn't know that.
This is fantastic because I think you brought a couple of very important, I just want to reiterate for our audience to pay attention. First of all, the planning of this is very important because, as you said, it gives a good discipline about the structure of the company, how you go about running your business, and knowing that when you engage in the exit, as you just said, it takes the attention away from the business. And if you're a small business, it can be completely wiping out the value. So even through the process, because this is one of the things I always say to my clients, is just say, if your sales drop, even during the process, the valuation can drop too, because they're looking at your business as an ongoing concern.
I've never known anybody go into a data room, Homy, and go, "Oh, this is so much better than I thought. Do you want more money?" They never do that. They're always looking to chip, always.
Yes. And the second thing that you just said, which is, I think it's very crucial, not just for during the exit, but throughout, is the various advisors a business must have. So coming back to how you open, because you've sat on both sides, you've helped people sell their businesses, you've sold your business, you've been involved. What do you look for in advisors, both in terms of finding your business, selling your business, finding a buyer, and also the other one, the tax advisors, lawyers, etc.? What are some of those your key nuggets for people who want to go and find advisors?
So, just talking first of all about corporate financiers, I cannot tell you how many times I'm asked, "Well, have you got industry experience in this sector?" And because we've been going 35 years, we've got experience in lots of sectors, but inevitably this will be something that I might not have had. We were talking to some people yesterday, and it's a very complex bioscience business, and we have sold some bioscience business, but this guy, to be quite honest, I didn't know what I was just talking about. But you don't need to have industry experience to sell a business. It's like, if I'm an estate agent, I can sell a bungalow, I can sell a luxury penthouse, I can sell a villa, I can sell a mansion, because it's all the same process, just a different audience. But I do think it helps if you understand the mentality of the vendor. And while we don't exclusively deal only with owner managers, mostly we do. That doesn't mean that we don't sell, hairdressers and small local businesses. That's not because there's anything wrong with those businesses, but generally, by and large, those people don't need my sort of service. But owner managers, and I speak as an ex-owner manager, are a special breed.
Yep.
This is their business, and I advise people that you may well get vendor remorse when you've sold this business, even if you've sold it for a lot of money, because we've all been to events, and the first question is, so what do you do? And then it becomes, well, what do I do? And particularly if, like me, you've worked at this most of your working life. So in terms of the type of advice, I think you need somebody who understands your personal motivation. So if I was, people like KPMG and their Magic Circle firms, they aren't interested in deals less than 10, 20 million is a small deal for them.
Yeah.
I'm going, yippee, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Also, you need to make sure that you're being looked after by the senior people, because if you are only a minnow in the pool, even if they've taken you on, they're not going to send their senior people out. They might send the senior people out to get the deal, but then they'll leave you to the more junior stuff. So you need to meet the people. And respect and trust should be a given. I think importantly, you have to like the people that you are going to be working with, because you are going to get to know them better than your family in the next 12 months. So you have to be able to have a laugh. You have to be able to cry on the shoulder. You have to feel comfortable that you can ring them on a Saturday night when they're just sitting down to watch Strictly, because you're worried about it. And I think that chemistry is very important. We have unusual values in our business, unusual for the industry. They're be kind, work hard, stay positive, and have fun. Those are not normal corporate finance values. But they work very well for us, because we are very user-friendly, we are very sympathetic to people who are going through this for the first time, because I wouldn't say we've seen it all, but we've seen a lot. And for lawyers, sadly, often lawyers tickle around the edge of corporate transactions, particularly if you go to a small firm. I think the worst deal I ever did was where the buyer, I was acting for the vendor, used his divorce lawyer to do the transaction. Clearly, he'd never done a transaction like this before. It obviously put everybody's costs up because they didn't understand, arguing about things that weren't important. So you need people from a legal background who have done deals of your size. Sector, again, doesn't matter. If the deal is quite complex and you've got property and service contracts, there are these new legal teams set up where they're sort of individuals under an umbrella brand. While they look cheap, I would not recommend going for them, because if that person is on holiday, they haven't got anybody else to pick up a problem, and problems always happen. Same with tax, and all this tax is going to change. So we need to make sure that we've got people who are right on the button and are creative and can advise you in advance. In fact, even before you find, a corporate financier, I talk to a tax person. And if you don't know anybody, ask them to recommend somebody. And of course, as with any advisor, recommendations give you a safety net, I think. But don't use your accountant who's never done a deal.
Yes.
Because they just won't know what to do.
So if I may, I'd like to summarize, because most of the things that you just said, spot on. But there are two things that stood out for me, three things, to be honest. The first one is it has to be someone who is, quote unquote, your partner, because it's going to be a long process. That's number one. Number two, the second thing that you just said, which really stayed with me, and I want to concur with that, is that industry is not that important. However, the third thing that you just said, which I think was very good, that make sure they have done this size of deals before, because I think that was the key thing that stayed with me. So now I want to move very quickly, assuming we've given a nugget to our audience of why you should sell, how do you find a buyer, how do you go, just looking at the process itself, as from the moment when you want to put up yourselves until you identify targets, until negotiation. Can you just give us a rundown? A lot of people don't understand. Marketing yourself to your customers is one thing. Marketing yourself to somebody to buy your business is a completely different thing. And we have like the terminology where you have the teasers, you have information memorandums, and all the confidentiality. That just give us a quick high level. What are the things that people should be mindful when they're getting into this process, before they get into this process? Hopefully before, not right spot on.
Okay. Deciding to sell your business could be for a variety of reasons. It could be ill health, you could want to retire, you could be bored with it, want to realise some value. So that decision is a big decision to take and shouldn't be taken lightly. And being an entrepreneur can be quite lonely. And if you haven't got a coach yourself, maybe this is the time to talk to your coach. But I definitely think you should talk to your family, because you're going to be a different person through this process and past this process. I remember this is years ago, done this deal. The guy, he ran like an online bingo company. It was really successful. He got bored with it. And we got a buyer all ready to sign. And I'm literally stepping on a plane to go on holiday. And his wife rang me and said, I've told him to take the business off the market or I'll divorce him because I can't bear him to be at home with me anymore. I went, what? So, make sure everybody's comfortable with this decision. And then, take some time out to talk to other people that have maybe sold the business. Ask how it felt. Ask who they used, and then talk to a few of the advisors. And what we've just talked about getting that chemistry right. Because you will run up some fees. Most corporate finance fees, the larger part of them are dependent on a sale, but there is a commitment fee. But lawyers and accountants, they run up costs like nobody's business.
Rapidly.
And I would always recommend that you agree a fixed fee with your lawyers, because they will argue all day and night that should be a full stop and not a colon, and really, do we care? So wherever you can, agree some fixed fees. Then your corporate financier is going to want to find out why you're selling and what you want from the business. And I mean, in terms of value. And valuing a business is a bit like valuing beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder, depends who the buyer is, and so on. So the first thing to do is to get an honest valuation. And there's an organisation called Foxtons in London. They're a big estate agent. And they are known for overvaluing property because they want to get that property on their portfolio. There are transaction support people like myself who do that.
Mm-hmm.
You need somebody who's going to be honest with you. And if I say to you, your business is worth £2 million, and you say, well, I want 5, I'm going to say to you, well, it's not worth 5. And if I put it on the market, it's very unlikely you will get 5. But if you do A, B, and C, and D, and come back to me in 12 months, 2 years' time, we might be able to do that. But there are unscrupulous people out there that say, oh, yes, of course we can. So that's why I think you should talk to people about their experiences and why they've gone with that person. Then one of the things that confuses people in value of business is it's not numbers alone. It's what we call hidden assets. Hidden assets are those things that have a value that are not necessarily quantifiable. And that takes some conversations with our researchers as to what it is that really is making your business special. It's very difficult to say there are USPs anymore. And, with the advance of AI and things are just changing all the time. But what can we find in your business that makes it extra special? Then we need to draw up a very, very tight, and by that I don't mean short, I mean well-researched target list, thinking horizontally, vertically, internationally, locally, internally, of buyers. And you're establishing 2 things on that, or our researchers are: desire, we want to buy, and ability. If you don't have those 2, you won't get a sale. I really want a Ferrari, I really want it, but I can't afford it. Mm-hmm. So we need somebody who wants it and can afford it, or we can do a deal structure with them. And then it's important to think wider than just, a horizontal sale. Once you've got that list together, then we would create what we call a teaser that you mentioned, which is a 1-pager, doesn't say who the business is, describes it, south-facing, great garden, etc., to entice people to come and find out more. However, I would say don't pull any punches. If you've got something that you know is going to be uncovered that's nasty, there's no point not saying it, because you're just wasting time, because there are tire kickers, a lot of tire kickers out there. So be honest. That goes out with an NDA. An NDA, of course, they're broken all the time. But if you don't put it in place, then you've got nothing to sue on. But if word does get out, my advice to a vendor is to say, yes, we're looking for investment. That's a much less scary statement than we're looking to sell. The fact that the investment might be 100% is neither here nor there, because we don't know. It might not. It might be 100%, it might be 50%. And I've gone into transactions with people say, oh, I'm never going to sell a part of the equity. And then they've met the bride or the groom and they fall in love and they go, okay, let's give it a go. So that manages that, and it also manages internal issues. Yeah. Because everybody's looking for investment. And then you're producing the information memorandum that you mentioned, Homy, which is the more detailed document, which goes out when somebody's come back and said, yes, we'd like to find out more. And it's very important that the information talks about the potential, what can be done with this business, not just what you've done. We've seen what you've done, but what else can you do with it? If you had loads of money or a better partner, or what's unexploited. And it's important to talk about that. Of course, you've got to talk about the financials, but what you're telling is a story. I call it selling the sizzle, not the sausage. The sausage is very obvious. We need them to smell that sizzle and want to eat that sausage. And then we encourage our vendors to produce, well, we produce it for them, a management presentation, which is where the buyer comes, and it allows you to bring the information memorandum up to date, ask questions, meet management team, as when we're comfortable to meet the people. And then we run a controlled auction. The controlled auction is where buyers make bids, not just a number. Numbers, as I said, all well and good. What we need is the deal structure. When is it going to be paid? What are the key terms? We call those letters of intent. Those letters of intent come in, not binding, of course. We then, as corporate financiers, go back, renegotiate to find the ideal bidder. And it may not be the biggest number, but it may be a better deal structure. They then, as buyer, write that into what's called heads of terms. Again, not binding, but it is what we call the spirit of the deal, where all parties are buying into this, and therefore any digression from that is not regarded very well. I'm not saying people don't do it, but generally it's the spirit of the deal. Then you're going to let them into your data room, and the data room needs a lot of preparation. Do not do this when you've got heads of terms. You need to prepare all your data room before, and we have a long list of stuff that people ask for. I think it's like 30 pages. All your contracts, all your leases, or, you know, all your maybe litigation issues, whatever is going on, all your projections or your assumptions, because they're going to go in and they're going to check that. And at the same time, simultaneously, the buyers are preparing the sale and purchase agreement. So hopefully they come out of the data room, might be a bit of toing and throwing on negotiation, may not. The lawyers are preparing the SPA, the sale and purchase agreement. They might be preparing service agreements, property transfers. And at that point, then you're moving towards completion. All sorts of things to look out for, you know, particularly if there's an earn-out. That's where you've done a deal where you're going to be paid over a period of time. Earn-outs need very, very careful drafting, because again, the only people that win are the lawyers interpreting, well, that's not what you said. And be open to earn-outs though, because particularly in a service, generally a buyer will want to see contingencies in place if things fall away because you've left.
It was such a nice thing, just going from a quick through, and I just want to replay back some of the things that I heard, especially for our audience. Number one is that you are selling a service business, so it's very crucial. And as you alluded earlier, your people are your assets. Your people walk, there goes your asset. This is very crucial. Life plan before business plan. Make sure everybody's on board with you. What are you going to do after? What is your next step after you sell the bit? Get it together. Even with the good advisors, you still have to be on the ball.
Absolutely. I mean, what the advisors are doing all the sweeping up, but they are going to be asking you, well, they've asked for this piece of information, which isn't in the data room. We can't get it. They want it. And you need to be able to get it to us quick, because the delay will be a disaster. And that's why you need to have a team supporting you so that things don't get left.
As I said earlier, one of the key things that I say to my clients, my word, and say, grow to exit, be ready to exit. The critical aspects of it is you need to know the value of your business, honestly, not what would you like. And the reason is that valuation, as you said, the moment the process starts, the dollar amounts, the pound amounts are going out the door. You're paying the cost. It's not free. And this is where it's important. You think, like sometimes I've heard when I talk to a client, just say, I want 10 million. I said, that being rude, I don't care what you want. The question is, what's the value of your business to that one? And one thing else that you have said, which I think a lot of places, especially now that we're coming on the coaching business, that people leave on the table is, it is your own responsibility. And you hit it on the nail on this one, just say your hidden assets. Sometimes people don't know how much nuggets of value they have inside of the business. No one can tell you this. The other one that you said, you must have a story. People are buying this business for a reason, and every purchase has an emotional element. even private equities, even corporate buyers, multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. You also highlighted it's all about people. Know your people, bring them on the journey. You do not want to surprise them. Such a tricky thing that people think they can hide something. The later it comes out, I think it will be the worst for your valuation. Transparency also means you know your business, because there's nothing worse than they find something you don't know, because that usually gives a very, very bad signal. And I just wanted to get you to give the seller, the business owner, negotiation techniques. Like, what should they worry about? Because as you said, they're not going to come with their best offer, most likely. How should they react to that one? How should get engaged in the negotiation? And also something you hinted at after the deal, because especially in the coaching business, I would be very surprised if they don't ask the owner to stick around for a while for the earnout. And from that one, the question becomes, what are the warranties or indemnities? How should they deal with the post-sale process?
Okay. First of all, negotiations. We all negotiate every day. If you've got children, you've been negotiating with them since the day they could speak. So we all can negotiate. But there are techniques that work. One of the best techniques is silence. So when people make an offer that is exactly where you want it to be, do not go, yes, okay. If it's lower than you want it to be, also say nothing, because silence can be filled by the other side. So if it was too low, they may say, I'm assuming you don't like that. And again, I might say, nothing. Because the more silent you are, the more likely they are to speak. Equally, if they've given you an offer you really liked, they may go, okay, well, we can go a bit higher. So that's one of my first negotiating techniques. If you're getting an offer that is, really good, but the deal structure is not good, do not negotiate the little things first. Negotiate the big things first, okay? Because then, if you win that, you can start throwing the things that you were happy to give. So I have a little postcard message, which is write down a half a dozen things that you will not compromise on, no matter what. Be very careful, because no matter what is a very, very big word. Okay? I remember selling a chain of supermarkets, a family-owned chain of supermarkets, to Sainsbury's. And one of the things that they put on the list was, we will not change our name to Sainsbury's. I said, well, Sainsbury's won't buy it then, because they're not going to buy another brand. But what I did persuade them to do is to make it the name of the business, blah, blah, at Sainsbury's for 12 months. So be very careful. Don't say, I'll never do an earn-out. These are things that really matter to you. So, values, you mentioned this earlier, Homy. Values are very important in a successful transaction. And particularly if you've got an earn-out and you feel that your buyer doesn't adhere to your values, it's likely that the deal will fail and you won't get your earn-out and you'll have let all your staff down, which is why things like an EOT can work very well, or a management buyout, is keeping those values intact. Like any negotiating sort of process, it's good to have a bad cop and a good cop. Your corporate financier should pay the bad cop, because almost certainly you're going to have to stay in the business, so you don't want to make enemies before you even start. So I usually sit opposite my vendor so I can kick them if I think they're being, either too nice or too aggressive. And then I'll go, well, Joe says we really can't do this. And then I'll perhaps go into a separate room with the other advisors and we can shout and scream at each other while the buyer and the seller just have a nice coffee. So you need to build a rapport, okay? Also, I never bring lawyers into negotiating rooms. They are absolutely absolutely terrible negotiators. They're dealing in the detail, and you need to keep them away from that. You also need to instruct them on your risk appetite, because lawyers will tell you there will be a tsunami this afternoon in Yorkshire. Well, we've had a lot of rain, but we haven't had a tsunami yet. And maybe your appetite for risk is, I'm prepared to risk it. Oh, no, 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 the earth will end tomorrow. So you have to advise them, because otherwise they'll keep telling you not to do anything. And you mentioned warranties and indemnities. So warranties and indemnities are promises that you are making to the buyer about things that will happen or haven't happened or have happened, but we've told you about it, which are called disclosures. And disclosures will mean that you will remove the risk of having a claim on an indemnity or a warranty. If you disclose it, it might affect the price. So disclose early on in the transaction. So as part of the negotiations, you know, sadly too many times something's happened, like a litigation process has started with an employee and we know we're nearly at the end of the deal. Do not disclose that, because then if that turns nasty, they will make a claim. Also, lawyers get totally over-agitated about this. The thing to do is you can insure against claims on warranties and indemnities. You can actually take out an insurance policy. So it's not the end of the world, but the lawyers will terrify you into a whole process of declaring anything and everything. I say declare everything that you know about, which is what can be reasonably expected. But if anything happens last minute, I had a company who was selling, the management team were brilliant. The day before completion, the new CEO to be had an epileptic fit. They'd never had one before. She rang me, did the vendor, and said, should I tell them? I went, absolutely, absolutely tell them. But they'll pull out. They didn't pull out, but it would have been absolutely awful if we hadn't told them, and then this person had another epileptic fit and it signed it had one just before completion. It would have been a massive claim. Also to tell you, again, to put things into perspective, and I don't know if you had this, Homy, when you were in the industry, in 35 years of transactions and 400 plus deals, I've never, ever had anybody make a claim on warranties and indemnities. But I've had lawyers run up tens of thousands of pounds discussing the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant, Joe, because again, this has been such a great conversation. Just want to cover three things, takeaways for me, so hopefully the audience will appreciate it. The first thing that you just said, 6 key things to put on the postcard, like the six, because I thought, as we were talking, I said to myself, if the list is too long, you cannot enforce it. That's the first takeaway for me. And the second thing, no, it's a must, not a should. The more constraint you put, the more difficult the deal becomes, which I thought was brilliant. The second thing that I really, really like, you're selling a coaching business. You should know that it's a people business. You need to maintain a good relationship with the buyer. So I thought it was brilliant. Let your corporate financiers be the bad cop in this one. Keep your relationship, because you will probably run into them for a very long time. And finally, on the issue of risk, it's absolutely crucial. And 100%, no offense to the lawyers, it's their job to unearth every minute risk and put it on the table, because they charge also. So for you, it's very important to have that risk appetite in terms of, and as you said, I've never seen the warranties. Let's put it this way, if the warranties comes, you will be in a very nasty court battle. And it usually means, I've heard of it, I've never seen it, somebody somewhere hid something.
Yeah.
Which I think comes back to what you were just saying. As long as you're transparent, the buyer will assess the risk and they will know what risk they're taking on board. So I think that's brilliant. This has been beyond enlightening in terms of selling your business, thinking about it. And I really hope our audience benefits from the key issues. And the takeaways were plenty.
And try and learn from the process.
Fantastic. Joe, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
This has been very, very informative, and it's been such a pleasure having these conversations with you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you very much.